Hey everybody, and welcome back. I hope that this works. I am so excited for today's conversation. I also want to be very aware and just very cognizant of, how things are not always perfect. So, yay, I think it's working. I have a conversation with Poppy. So, yay for trying and for not giving up and, um, just having faith that things.
We're here.
It's so good to see you.
Oh my gosh, that is by the way, everybody, thank you so much for the direction. The I was like, where's the thing? But for everybody who also has any of these problems, it's you need to update your app. Says myself who's built an app. So it's hilarious that I forget to update Instagram. But sorry, and thank you so much for having me.
No problem. And it's one of those things where, I mean, it's such a perfect segue into our conversation about being happy, not perfect. And I think like some of our biggest demons are like that so many of us like lean into perfectionism. And if it's not perfect, then we can't do it. And so what a lesson, and just how a great way to start off our conversation.
I couldn't agree more. I have basically written a book about that, and obviously have spent my last 5 years of a career looking into helping people with that. And it's because I am my worst enemy. I am the biggest perfectionist, and I kind of think to be honest, the beginning of this conversation really does sum up mental health in general, which is we never complete the game. We never go, oh, it's over, I'm not a perfectionist anymore. I had one therapy session and it's it. It's like we are all works in progress, and these little things come up now and again, like just trying to get on an Instagram live, and you go, yes, a beautiful lesson of life.
Yeah, I love that. And you know what? I think that for so many of us that, that are joining, and like, I know that for me personally, that, for me, my journey here was, my experience with my mental health disorder. I experienced eating disorders and perfectionism and anxiety and all of that. And I know that when I was in a different place, like something like that happened today would have like started like the shitty committee between my ears telling me X, Y, and Z. And I love so much that you've dedicated so much of your time and so much of your work towards, like my amazing clinical director friend and mentor says, good enough is good enough, and allowing yourself the space and grace to really lean into that. So there's so many things. I have so many questions. I think I said like on the second try of this is that I went through this beautiful, I don't want to call it black hole because that's not, I don't feel like that's very positive, but beautiful space of learning, just watching so many videos and reading so much of your writing. And thank you so much for that first and foremost. But for folks that are tuning, who are not familiar with you, can you just share a little bit about you, about what led you to this work and what led you to launch all the things?
Well, thank you so much. And that is such a great point. I think someone just also noted it. Good enough is good enough. It's a mantra I have to remind myself of every single day, as is happy, not perfect. But really, like you, I personally struggled. So many people around me struggled with their mental health, and I just felt compelled to do something about it. And back in 2015, the cultural conversation was very different to where it is now. Now we can be on a public Instagram live and openly talk about mental health and know that we have this supportive and very accepting community listening in and engaging with us. But 6 years ago, this would never have happened, and it was a conversation that we kept inside clinics or doctors' rooms, or maybe we didn't even have the conversation at all. We just had it in our head and assumed that we were gonna just struggle through life, as we are. And I was hosting a television show on Snapchat at the time, and so I used to get thousands of messages from people all around the world telling me the same things that I was feeling inside, which is, I feel really overwhelmed, I'm stressed out, social media is really toxic, oh God, I'm not doing as well as everybody else around me. And you know, we all fall into traps of comparing ourselves and then decide that we're not good enough and find evidence for why we're not good enough and why we need to change. And I remember going to sleep with those thoughts, and I woke up at 3 a.m. with these words, happy, not perfect. And it was like a weight had lifted off my shoulders, because I'd spent 26 years of my life working myself to the bone. Like, if I could just fit in another hour, or if I could work out harder, or it was just, you know, I was a chronic people pleaser, just everything. You just wanted to be perfect for everybody around you, for yourself, unrealistic expectations of what you demanded from yourself. And it fundamentally made me really sick. And I just knew that there was nothing out there. When I looked around, the only thing I could find was meditation. And meditation, it's brilliant, but also I wasn't there yet. I couldn't meditate. I struggled with meditation, and I thought, surely there must be other things that we can do for our mind every day that isn't sitting still listening to my shitty committee get even louder.
Exactly.
And that really was the beginning of Happy Not Perfect, in creating the app and turning the science of happiness and positive psychology into easy, accessible tools. And then the book was this, and the podcast is this deeper dive into really understanding how our brain functions, because that's what I also found amazing really about the last 6 years, is I suddenly woke up going, I've got no idea how my brain even works, let alone how to manage it better.
So, I mean, so much and all the things. And, you know, when you were sharing and just talking just then, I started to think of like how many of us are governed by these rules, these internal rules that we have no idea where they came from, but yet it's our North Star. And, you know, allowing us that space to think that there's something outside of the rigidity of the perfectionism of the people pleaser, that it's not, you know, black or white. Like we say oftentimes in group, it's not black and white. It's really a rainbow in between. Because like gray, I think short changes just the beauty of the what's in between. And so you know, one of the things I was thinking of when I was putting together the questions for this live is, you know, you are someone in the public eye, you are someone who, you know, utilize social media. How have you been able to maintain healthy boundaries around it? Specifically when, you know, you said that you have like even a television show on Snapchat, like how have you been able to maintain healthy boundaries to not equate, you know, your self-esteem to the feedback you're getting from the community as a whole?
You know, that I think is a question that we spend a lifetime addressing in a way, because we grew up, we were all conditioned to crave recognition of external validation, and it feels really good. You know, the chemicals that a well done creates inside are our happy chemicals. And so when we do get a pat on the back, we feel safe and we feel loved and we feel accepted. And the three basic human needs we all have is we all want to feel like we're enough. We all want to feel like we're loved, and we all want to feel like we're accepted. And this goes back to our evolutionary needs to be a part of a tribe, because if we were part of a tribe, it meant that we were safe and we were going to survive. So fundamentally, Instagram plays with our survival instincts. It kind of says, oh, is your content going to be seen today, or is it not? Are we gonna put it in an algorithm that means that you're going to get a lot of recognition, or are we not? And suddenly we have this algorithm manipulating our illusion of whether we are accepted or are we not. And to be honest, it's a daily it takes a daily management to pull yourself away, because it's really easy to buy into the illusion. And social media is very clever. They've created these algorithms for a reason. And also there is this kind of cultural pressure for us all to be engaging with this digital platform and have these digital avatars, versions of ourselves. That also doesn't even take into account that we are a 360 human being. Social media makes us 2D, but I've yet to find a person that's a 2D, that I've yet to find a person that doesn't have conflicting views about a subject. But in an Instagram caption, you're forced to say one thing, but it doesn't mean you don't believe another thing. It's just that you've chosen to talk about one thing. And so I feel that you know, how have I managed it? To be honest, probably at times really badly, because I have equated likes to a measurement of if I was being successful. But
Mhm.
actually, I guess what I've learned, and actually writing the book has been like, I guess my kind of my greatest almost kind of tool, for therapeutic tool, because it reminded me that we need to define our own way we view success. We need to define our own rules for living, and one that isn't associated with an algorithm, or whether it is falling into this kind of mold of digital validation.
It's so, so true. And I think it's not only by the reinforcement we get by, just from each other, by, putting pictures out, seeing how many likes and shares and all of that. But I also think it goes the other way too, is how we perceive other people. And, we've seen the research, we know the implications. We know that that social media tends to have even more of an effect on an individual self-worth, self-esteem, all of those things, because there's that credible aspect of, it's people, like it's people that like you look up to, people that you admire, and of course this reminder that you're comparing your everyday to literally a curated highlight reel of someone else's. And when you start to do that comparison game, which inevitably we do because we're humans that are being, we're going to fall short, because again, we are trying to get to this unrealistic expectation that, it's overwhelming. As my dear friend Eric just posted in the comments, is it also then plays into like diet culture. It plays into plastic surgery. It plays into a certain exercise. It also plays into career as well, because we know that too much of anything can be potentially harmful. Like I'm definitely someone that I will fully be transparent that I oftentimes lean into work and feel like I should be going and doing and producing at all times, or else I'm not being successful. What you need to also be very cognizant that, like what you shared, like a social media break or a lunch break, or turning your phone off and filling up your cup, because if we don't have a cup, if we don't have an oxygen mask on, we cannot be supporting other people and give, honestly, being the best versions of ourselves.
I couldn't agree more. And I think, you know, sometimes we spend so much time talking about, you know, what we can all do. Like we all know that, you know, maybe it is that you meditate, or we all know that we should be doing all these different things for our wellness. But actually, I think one of the most powerful things we can all do is just take time to be aware
Mhm.
of our coping mechanisms that sometimes can turn toxic. And this is something I talk a lot about in the book. For example, I, on the surface, have, like you, this coping mechanism. When things feel stressful, I go, well, I'll just work.
Yeah. Oh, I think we lost audio. Oh, there she is. But
Sorry, everyone. Um, um, so this coping mechanism on the surface, that's great. It's like, oh, if I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'll just work harder. But actually, is that is that is that actually what I need? Is that really nourishment in the state that I'm in? And awareness, again, sometimes doesn't just come like this. It's a slow process of really taking time to get to know yourself and actually track your habits and responses to different situations in life. And I do think that's the greatest gift you can give yourself is an awareness, and then from that awareness, a compassion and a forgiveness, to know that you are doing the best you can.
yeah,
And you know, when you know better, you can do better. But just getting to know yourself is a really, really good first step.
I love that. And it's also reminding ourselves that we, despite what, we've talked about so much, the shitty committee in between your ears is saying, is that we deserve to give ourselves grace. Like, so often we tend to be a lot more gratuitous with other people, where it's like, of course they need to fill their cup, of course they're doing as much as, and yet when we turn the mirror onto ourselves, it's a different story. There's a different set of standards, and it's allowing yourself the opportunity to say, you know what, I get a time out, I get a refuel, I get like a beat like everyone else. And it's really hard to see in the moment when your life is, insane, and like, you're doing 50 things and you're running one direction to the next. like I know that for me personally, like sometimes when I'm hitting my end, my husband, my partner will say to me, "Go take a bath," and I'm like, "Are you out of your mind? Like, no one has time for a bath right now." And then he just sort of looks sideways, and I lean into it, and I take a bath, and I have to tell you, it's like a game. Like I'm able to show the manner in which the alliance needs me, my child needs me, and yet it's very easy to sort of skip over that because we feel like we're just too busy to fill up our cups.
Oh, 100%. You know, it's that kind of famous line, put your air mask on yourself before you can help somebody else. And, you know, and also I think it's really important to understand what advice resonates with you, because, you know, again, in this wellness world, we are given so much advice by so many different people. And, you know, for us to clearly, we kind of, you know, we clearly have some of the same kind of coping mechanisms, which is, oh, work harder, perfectionism. But for other people, actually, when they're stressed, they want to do the exact opposite. And actually, it's encouraging themselves to make sure they still go and see friends, they still do daily activities, when actually all they want to do is kind of do nothing. And so, and I think that's a really interesting point when it comes to kind of, you know, really personalizing the advice we're all being given. And that was something that really came clear to me when I was writing this book, as in, okay, these are techniques that help me, and I hope they help you, but also like find your true north that helps you find the direction when inevitably life takes you off course.
I love that. And that genius reminder that it's not one size fits all. And some of the things that are helpful today will not be the same things that are helpful for you next week. Like it's not written, in permanent ink. It's take what you need in the moment. Also, if something is not working for you, try other things. Don't just stop. And I think that so many of us, I mean, I will fully show up for this, is, I'm so black and white that, well, I tried it, it doesn't work, we're moving on. Like, and giving yourself that opportunity to say, well, this didn't work, let me try something else. And if this doesn't work, keep on going to the next one. I absolutely have tools that I use from 20 years ago when I started my recovery journey that I still hold steadfast to. And then there's stuff that I did 20 years ago, 2 decades ago, that if I tried doing them now, they would be ineffective, or they wouldn't be helpful now. So it's giving yourself that fluidity and that grace to say, what do I need for myself? And I love what you said, is that it's not just, one side. It's not just one thing. Here are some suggestions, try them out. And if they don't go and try to find other things that are there to fill your cup. So I love that so much. I would love to know, because I know something that we hear at the client, especially this past year, for so many of us, right? With this, things being so out of control and not knowing this anxiety. For those of us that have experienced anxiety, it definitely wasn't helpful. So I would love to know, how have you navigated it personally, and has it had any effects on your mental health? And if so, what has been helpful during this time?
So I think this is actually one of the reasons I wrote my book during the pandemic. And this idea of change was so relevant, because undoubtedly we've all had challenges. There is not a single person that I have spoken to or met that has not found it challenging, and again, challenging in different ways. If people could have been grieving actual life, the loss of life, but people could have been grieving the loss of their routine and the loss of community. And it really brought me to the core concept of change. Change is the only inevitable thing that we all go through in life. And for the first time, probably ever, humanity, especially in our lifetimes, we've gone through a moment where we had collective change, because usually we're changing at different rates. And sometimes I think we forget that we have different growth spurts. And so again, that's the reason why, comparison is something that we all do, but also so ridiculous, because we're all on completely different journeys. But the pandemic came and all of us were asked to go through significant change, but yet we're never taught how to handle change. And so it just seems bizarre in many ways that we don't go to a class which is how to handle when life gets turned upside down for whatever reason. And there was obviously no guidebook to how to deal with the pandemic either. So that was also delightful that we all had zero handbooks and had to kind of like stumble our way through. So for me, this idea of flexible thinking really became my solution, which is this idea that things are always going to change. The pandemic was also was a great rehearsal for when we're next going to go through big change in our own life, which is something out of our control. And I kept having to remind myself when I would become stressed or overwhelmed or feel anxious or all the other feelings that we go through. Well, can I control this or can I not? And when we can't control something, like so many of us wished we could have controlled the pandemic and made it stop way sooner and protected more lives and all the rest of it, but we couldn't, and we've tried our hardest too. And the element of, you know, of acceptance and the tools that helped me to sit there in acceptance and remind myself what I could control became really, really helpful. And even mantras like, you know, I surrender, I surrender, I surrender was really powerful. You know, before I went to sleep, you know, just repeating that mantra, or in the morning, for example. And in flexible thinking and this whole philosophy that I wrote around that was the idea of, you know, focusing on your values and focusing on, okay, well, how can you show up today as the person you want to be, and what does that person look like? So I think in moments of change, we need to kind of almost like become even more attuned to our intuition and that wise brain, and that often comes through just a moment of pause and belly breathing.
I love that. And I think that, you know, you just definitely went into my next question of like the whole theory about the book and the flexible thinking approach. And, you know, and someone who quite honestly has worked so hard for decades on, you know, walking away from that dichotomous brain in a sense, like that black or white, all or nothing, and wanting control because control feels safe. I absolutely, last year it was like, you know, where was that Yellow for Dummies book that said read this if a pandemic happens? And if you're out there listening and you want to write it, please do. We could have used it a year ago, but no time like the present. And I think, you know, obviously Happy Not Perfect will be a tremendous guidebook for that as well. You know, it's you know, you talked about the even like an affirmation, a mantra, like I surrender. What other tools did you that were super helpful in like quieting the inner critic and actually helping you get through the day in and the day out of that, being able to lean into flexible thinking, being able to be like, don't know what's going to happen and I'm still safe? Like, what was super helpful for you?
So we actually launched in the middle of the pandemic on the Happy Not Perfect app a sleep wind down, because I think that sometimes, you know, the busyness of the day can momentarily quiet that inner critic inside, and then suddenly we kind of slow down ready for bed, and we're like, okay, gonna nod off now, and suddenly that inner critic is like, and we're then awake for hours. And also sleep is the bedrock of our mental health. If we do not get a good night's sleep, it is virtually impossible to have good thought health the next day, because we're tired, we are much more reactive. Our, you know, our prefrontal cortex, that computer side of the brain, is really, really slow because it wants to go back to bed, and our emotional monkey is like given food and wants to like basically rule our brain in the way that we are going about our day. So sleep is critical. So how do we protect our sleep? Well, a good thing to do is a ritual before bed, because often it's the time where we can reflect, it's the time we can release any worries, it's the time we can set intentions, and it's the time we can just take a breath and relax our nervous system down. So I would really protect my nighttime routine, which should always be a hot bath, because when you have a temperature change, you actually signal to the brain that it is time for bed. So kind of having as hottest bath as you can, kind of, or a hot shower as hot as you can manage, really, and then moving into a colder room will really help your brain get ready for sleep. And then moving into the sleep wind down on the Happy Not Perfect app, which is 8 steps backed by neuroscience. And then it asks you again to release your worries, set your intention, your grateful diary. Research showed that people who wrote a grateful diary before bed slept for longer, had better quality sleep, and woke up the next day feeling more refreshed. And then listening to either music that, again, helps calm your nervous system down further. And and the how flexible kind of thinking really fits into this is that first connection step. Because I think our head and our brain can be completely disconnected, and our head is thinking about another thing. We're ignoring how our body feels, and so that's why these, again, simple mindfulness practices can kind of realign us,
Mm-hmm.
and then I think help us manage anything that comes our way.
I love that. And I love even taking the time to write in your gratitude journal. Last night in our friends and family group, we had this incredible partner who he was there supporting his wife, and he shared about, I do a worry journal. And what I do is I write down all my worries, and I just put it in there. I close the book, and I put it in a drawer, and I put it away before I go to bed. It's like, I leave my worries there. I do not need to take them with me at night and to go to sleep. So I love it. Just so much resonates with his share last night. Um, I love the idea of just giving yourself this ritual of, we're stepping to a different time, a different part of the day, and really showing up for saying, sleep is part of the mind, body, spirit nourishment. It's just as important as any of the others. And I will absolutely say that, for me, there's a huge correlation to tie-in. Like, I know that the science is there, but I'll tell you from anecdotal data personally that when I'm not filling up my cup with rest and sleep, I'm definitely not able to, really ground as much, like, just be able to be a little bit more, I would say, utilize the tools and processes that I've worked so hard to bring to the table. So I know that we're starting to run out of time, but I do have two more questions. One of them is, what is your definition of the word happiness? Because I know that you talk about happy so much. So how would you describe happy?
I've redefined my definition of happiness to mean flexibility. And that fundamentally means that when we feel a self-trust to know that everything is unfolding perfectly, and also we can handle anything that's going to come our way too. Because I was really vulnerable to being really anxious, and can definitely have my anxious moments. And anxiety is a fear for the future, and fundamentally it's showing us this kind of lack of self-trust that we can handle anything, and also that things are always unfolding for us and not against us. And so true happiness, I think, is when I'm in that completely like divine peaceful state, when I know that I'm completely flexible. I can bend with the winds that come my way and still stay centered.
I love that imagery. We talk sometimes in group about, we're located, our headquarters are here in South Florida, so we have the ocean, privileged to have the ocean. And a really beautiful metaphor is, when you're in the ocean and you dig your feet in to the sand and a wave comes and it just knocks you over. However, if you just very gently like lift your feet and follow like the wave, you just go with it. And that would, like, to me, was such like a aha moment of like, okay, so if I lean into it and I allow myself the flexibility, it's really not going to be as bad as if I like hold steadfast and say, this is the construct of how I should be, or I need to be, or how my life has to be. So I really, really appreciate that reminder. Thank you so much for that. I know, and your book is coming out in June, correct?
Yes.
I hope that everyone goes out and gets it. And it's called Happy Not Perfect, and the app is available in all of the stores. So please make sure that you download it. It's truly exceptional. Thank you for that, of all of it. And I can't wait to read the book. But you do talk a lot about curiosity, vulnerability, passion, which, as a lover of all things Brene Brown and Glennon Doyle, those are some buzzwords that like first would like make my skin crawl, and now I'm like, I am showing up for the vulnerability and self-compassion with Kristen Neff. So how have you been able to lean into, curiosity, vulnerability, and compassion for not only others, but for yourself as well?
So I include in the book actually exercises, because I think these words can often feel quite kind of fluffy and we hear them a lot, but actually it's like, what do they mean? What does it actually mean to be compassionate? What does it mean to be curious? Like, they're great words, buzzy. I think a lot of the self-help industry uses them. And for me, it was understanding, well, how? It's a doing word. How do we turn those into things that we actually practice, not or kind of like the sound of? And curiosity, my hero for that was Byron Katie. And have you frozen? Oh no, okay. And Byron Katie, in her book Loving What Is, presents these 4 questions that completely changed my life. And she writes, the root of our suffering is in our thoughts. And it's, when you think about it and as she breaks it down, you're like, it's so true. How we interpret the world links to really how we feel about it. And so her questions is, is this true? Can I be 100% sure this is true? How does this thought make me feel? And who would I be without this thought? And, without our mean thoughts, we'd be on top of the world. We'd be feeling great about ourselves. We'd be feeling so excited for the future. But, it's that kind of inner ego doubt that steals our show a lot of the time. So curiosity to me is the action word of like challenging, like how do we challenge what we are telling ourselves to find truth? Because when we really start to challenge it, we suddenly realize that actually the argument is there's lots of gaps in it, and it's actually all lies. Compassion, the question I ask myself is, what would I tell a friend experiencing what I am now? And suddenly, we're all our best therapists to our friends. When our friend calls us up with a problem, we're like, listen up. This is what you should do. You're great. I don't know why you can't see how great you are, but this is what you should do, and that's what you should do, and this is how you should feel. And that was so simple for us. But yet when it's our own problems, we're like, again, in a doubt, like shitty committee starts up, and it becomes, our brain becomes foggy. So compassion is really using that third party perspective to treat ourselves like we would our best friends. Lastly, what was the other thing we're going to talk about?
Compassion, vulnerability, and curiosity. So vulnerability.
And vulnerability, I think, is just being truthful. Like fundamentally, it is knowing that if you are showing up as yourself, and one of my teachers actually said, when we've had our wonderful, God blessing, long lives, the question we get asked right at the end is, have you been yourself?
Yeah.
And I just thought that when I got told that story, I thought, that is such a lovely question to not wait right to the end of your life, but actually ask yourself now, like, am I being myself? Like, am I living my life right now in the way that feels good to me? And if it doesn't, we've all been there, like, what changes can I make? But I think vulnerability is having the confidence to be really, really honest and ask those tough questions, because tough questions can often lead to tough decisions. And sometimes I think when we're growing, it can feel uncomfortable. And I think we're then conditioned to think if things feel uncomfortable, then they're bad. Yeah. But actually being uncomfortable is growth and can be actually a wonderful feeling. And so I think to me, vulnerability really means that it's getting really truthful, even if it feels deeply uncomfortable.
And it just seems like, as you're talking about, these pillars, it's in my gut. Like when I lean into it, it's what I want. Like I want to have relationships as me. And I, and I have this mantra. It's like, I didn't come this far to only come this far. And it's going to be uncomfortable because, to get through something, you have to go through something. And I think if you ask anyone, like, has it been worth it when you've leaned into ability, when you leaned into curiosity, compassion, have you any remorse or any, well, I shouldn't have done that. And what you typically hear is absolutely everyone says it was worth it. And what a just amazing reminder. And I mean, such a beautiful conversation. So many amazing words of wisdom are in our audience, so very much appreciated. And so again, please everyone check out the book. It comes out in June. Definitely download the app. You are exceptional, Poppy. Thank you so much for the beautiful.
No problem.
for sticking with like technological.
It's my, I'm so sorry. It was my fault.
But just really thank you so much for having this beautiful conversation. And you know, everyone who's not following you, please go ahead, follow Poppy, follow Happy Not Perfect, and really look forward to staying connected. And good luck with all the things. Thank you so much for this beautiful time.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. And it's been a delightful conversation. So thanks for hosting it.
Same. Take care, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you all soon. Have a great rest of your day. Bye, everyone.